so this, I'm sure, will be a topic which will touch everybody's hearts, brains, nervous system, whatever you call it, right? So today when we wake up and go through our day, if we count the number of times we talk about generative AI, I don't know how many it would be, 2, 4, 14. Life starts and ends with generative AI and looking at the innumerable possibilities around that. And I'm very glad to welcome our esteemed panelists. Before we start, because everybody looks at generative AI from their own lenses. So I thought it's good to do a quick round of introductions here, and to do justice to it, I will not introduce the people, we will all introduce ourselves. To start with, I'm Usha, Srikanth, and I think Mayur mentioned I run global delivery, and my whole aspiration today is how do I really drive higher value with generative AI into the entire ecosystem from a workforce transformation perspective. Over to you, Amit.
Thanks, Usha. And, first of all, thank you for having me here. So I'm Amit Choudhury. I head, as you see, supplier operations. Let me demystify that a bit. So supplier operations is essentially procurement. So all the procurement processes for Unilever globally is run by my team, based out of Bangalore and at other centers across the globe. Okay, now, when I look at GenAI, I think, you mentioned 2 or 14. I think it's far more than that, to be honest, Usha, because it excites people a lot. It's about, one, what are the opportunities which are there? And it's still an unknown variable, to be very honest. Depending upon who you speak to, depending upon what mood the person is, it can be something like 6 months, somebody said, and 2 years. The opportunities are endless. So really looking forward to this conversation as well. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Amit.
Hello everyone, my name is Amit Katyal. I am Head of Technology with MUFG.
We, by the way, didn't do any seating of Amit and Amit together, huh? So it just happened.
Okay, thanks Usha. So I'm Head of Technology with MUFG Global Service. As Suzuki-san kindly mentioned earlier, it's a new center. Overall, I have 2 decades of experience of establishing GCCs in India with GE, with Citibank, with NetWest Group. Looking forward to the discussion on GenAI and listening to the esteemed guests here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and thanks to IBM for having us here. My name is Christopher Fernandes, and I work for Gallagher Insurance Brokers, and we've been in India for the last, close to a decade now. And interestingly, the setup was mostly for talent and people. And the last year or so has been all about technology. And what is leading that that transition is a lot of Gen AI and automation. In my role, I am looking at moving a lot of the technology innovation to India, which was historically done in the US and other parts of where we operate from. We're close to 10,000 here, 50,000 globally. And in the next 2 to 5 years, the 10,000 headcount is growing to 25,000. And the interesting part is, the technology impact that we as a group in India are going to play is immense. And a lot of that is going to be done through some of the AI and automation initiatives. So it's going to be interesting to hear what the other panelists also have to speak about, because from our perspective, we are definitely moving mountains in terms of what we're doing in India. Thanks.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sreejith. I'm come from this company called Amadeus. I don't know whether you heard about it. If you guys have traveled today, to reach here to this destination, you must have used or might have used our technology. So we are a leading travel tech company in the world. I had a unit called Traveler Ecosystem Data. To simply put, so I take care of data engineering, AI, ML, worked with data, AI for many years, and of course GenAI, the new kid on the block. We will speak about it. For me, I guess, we worked with AI for many years, so it's not necessarily very new, but there are new aspects. So we will discuss, what that means in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Hi everybody. My name is Rajesh. I work with a company called Thomson Reuters. I lead the Center of Excellence for Automation and AI. My motto is to see how we can bring in fun and enjoyment with AI technologies. That's something I will be driving within the organization. I'll keep it short at this. We'll discuss more.
Hello all, good evening. My name is Raghuprasad. I am from Continental Automotive. I head strategy for India R&D. Continental Automotive started in 2009. We are here from last 14 years, and we are 6,000 R&D engineers. We are the biggest Continental R&D in the globe among the Continental R&Ds. So, as part of my responsibilities, I am leading innovation for India and building R&D capabilities in India. And out of that, AI and GenAI plays an important role, especially onto the, as the panelists were mentioning, in automotive, we are moving towards software on the wheels. Thanks.
So I think, I mean, as I said, diverse set of panelists here, and I'm sure we will get to learn a lot. I'm going to start with you, Amit, and we all look upon Unilever for best practices. At least I've done that since I was a management trainee, which is like 3 decades back. So how are you in your organization looking at generative AI for business outcomes? Is it very different? What's your experience? It'll be great for the audience to understand.
I think that's a very, very wide question, to be honest, Usha. If you look at it, very honestly, I think we are just experimenting with generative AI. It's quite a new concept. For us, it's looking at how do we really drive massively, actually step change operational efficiency, drive service delivery as well. And I think for us, it's also about driving innovation. We are a product company. For us, it is about speed to market. So how do we really get products into the market much, much faster? Now, when you step back and look at it, each and every function, therefore, is looking at it with their own different lens. Now, if I look at our organization in the GCC or the GBS organization, as we call it, we are looking at more from a point of view of saying, how can we actually drive technology innovation? How can we drive operational efficiency? And for us, most importantly, experience. Now, in the last conversation I heard about, talking about cost arbitrage, and we've been on the same journey as a GBS organization. We moved from cost to a value, and what we're now doing is moving on to becoming an experience-centric organization. So for us, it is how do we really design our processes, make it more easy for users to actually use them, and hence AI comes in a big way in terms of, let's say, knowledge management, in terms of the services. Again, I think, Sony mentioned about the customer service center. That's another area which we are exploring as well. We're looking at in terms of driving our top line as well. So how can we really use, so for example, we've got a Shikhar app, which today has got around 1 million downloads. And that's, we use it to actually drive retail trade, which is huge in India. What we are seeing is how can we use technology to actually look at shelves and say, what should be ordered next? So there, I think, are lots of areas where we are looking at it. There is no limit, to be very honest. I think it's about making choices and making choices in a responsible and an ethical manner. I think that's going to be key for us. How do we really do it? And then making a couple of choices on what really drives larger business impact for us.
Making choices in a responsible and ethical manner, that's something I carry. And you said, the type of possibilities is immense in your own words. I quite agree with you. A follow-on question, and this I'll probably give it to you, Sreejith, where are you seeing business model changes because of this? Because Amit spoke about, a whole lot of art of possible, if I can use the term, right? So are you seeing business model changes emerge?
It does. Okay, so let's step back. Look, I think what has changed with GenAI is AI is not new, right? I mean, AI is there from the 50s. I mean, I remember reading about some of the use cases from the 50s, using AI. Now, of course, it has changed. The complexities have changed. Now, what has changed is the democratization of AI. Today, everybody happen to have one. We call it the iPhone moment, right? So iPhone changed the way the smartphones, I mean, the innovation which came behind it, I guess GenAI is doing exactly the same. It democratized. Everybody has access to AI. Now, look, the competition is not necessarily the same anymore. We are not necessarily looking into our traditional competitors. We are looking for somebody who have access to AI, in a corner, who will come up with a disruptive idea because now, they have this AI in their hands. And then, of course, I mean, what is new with generative AI is the generative part, right? I mean, the creative part of it. And I guess this is where, I mean, we are trying to see how do we change the business models. I mean, of course, it is changing. In the travel industry, if you look into it, I mean, one of the things which we are nowadays focused around is, you go search for a travel option. Today, what you do, you go to one of these Make My Trips or, the Yatras and so on. You search for an option, you get hundreds of, listings which is out there. Now, then you choose, one. It never gives you an option which is very relevant to you, right? And this is something which would change, I mean, in future. You search for something, you get one option which is relevant to you and not necessarily 100 options, and you are sitting and wondering, what do I pick? And then, of course, I mean, there will be changes with respect to the business models, I mean, behind it as well. Then you have all the customer support, I mean, which was spoken about. I think that will also change. I mean, so there's a lot of disruption which is happening in that space, and as such, I mean, there will be changes in the business model, I mean, which follow suit. Now, look, it's still in early phases. We know it's going to change. In what form and shape is still something, which we are all trying to figure it out.
I think that's really the surprise element there, right? And I always feel GenAI is a leveler in the industry. There is nobody ahead or behind.
Absolutely.
It's just, who can sprint faster. I think you touched on it, and I'm going to give it to your neighbor Rajesh, where he spoke about the competitor strategy. So do you think the way in each of our industries we look at competition, will that strategy start changing because of generative AI?
Well, certainly, but I'll take an analogy to answer this question. If you can just draw your attention to what I'm telling, and then experience this with me. Imagine I have a lemon in my hand, just taking it out from the refrigerator, you see the water vapor on top of it. I bring this lemon close to your nose, you smell this, it has an excellent aroma. I take the lemon back, I slice this into two, I bring this to your tongue and I squeeze this. I sprinkle some salt on top of it, I bring this closer again and squeeze it harder. Did your mouth water? Okay. So the competitive strategy from the last number of decades that we have been in the industry, have been seeing or hearing as students of management, has always revolved around cost leadership, cost, differentiation. Trust me, everyone sitting here is definitely doing something to differentiate, but with GenAI, the shift is not going to be inward facing. It will not be my organization, what I am doing. That's up to me to decide how I do. The shift in the coming days is going to be towards the customer, and if you can deliver that mouth-watering experience, that's the differentiator a customer is going to recognize you to. And given rest of the things are always there, like cost, experience, or the internal facing KPIs that we drive, that's all numbers that we will chase, but the definitive moment for the coming decade is experience, and experience from a customer standpoint. The customer is bombarded with multiple options, and only a mouth-watering experience is what's going to resonate with them. Others are going to just fade away. That's what I believe.
Mouth-watering experience with the lemon, I'll remember that. Okay. Now, given all of us are in some way or the other a part of the GCCs, and I'm sure each one of us in our own organizations in the headquarters, everybody is talking about generative AI, the impact of generative AI, and so on. Specifically from an innovation standpoint, Raghu, in your experience, what are you doing with generative AI? Is it an aha moment, like the iPhone moment that Sreejith spoke about? Tell us a little bit about how are you leveraging generative AI as an innovation lever in your organization?
Yeah. Oh moment, whatever it is. I will start with an example. I mean, the cars, a few of the cars you are driving already have generative AI inside it. Yeah. Like last year, we launched a Mercedes-Benz, one of the variant. In that, it has what I can say, it has a LLM already in it. To take an example, like now we are in December, right? It's winter in Europe and some parts of Canada. Car can access your tomorrow's schedule, and the car, if it is a snow day, the car will notify you that when to heat up the car. It will automatically start heating up the car, and it will send you a message like, to reach the destination you need to start how much time early. Yeah, that's an example from West as well as Americas coming on to India's, like in the automotive autonomous mobility what we work on, to train our control units for Indian road patterns and the traffic patterns here, and recognizing the objects. Yeah. So we are driving the car from last 3.5 years, petabytes of data into it, and we progressed, I would say, from last 6 months. The progression is like 1,000 times. I would say now with generative AI, we could able to completely sense and control the data right from cloud to road, road to cloud, with a complete closed loop on it. So to take another example from the automotive, like we all visit the service stations. For our technicians will check in our regular service, like what are the faults with the car, and then look at the onboard, and they connect a data acquisition device and check these faults. I think the predictive diagnostics, I mean, which we started with the AI, with Gen AI, it will be, I would say, 100 times faster. You could able to predict the things. I mean, when the parts of the car, the sensors and actuators, it's going to end the shelf life, or when it's going to fail, we could able to predict it much, much faster now. So to answer your question, I mean, in the overall industry, I would say like Gen AI in the innovation sector making an impact in 4 categories. First one on to the software development, like no code, low code, complete automation there. You have a co-pilot which will enable you to write the code, and also from the requirement engineering perspective, design perspective, a lot of things are getting automated. Coming on to the customer experience, which you are mentioning, there are a lot of innovations are coming, like hyper personalizations are coming into picture. Lot of innovations are happening there. Even in automotive industry, like looking at what's the user experience we can give it to the user based on the personalized user experience. Yeah. Next one is all of us are into it, like end-to-end automation of our day-to-day tasks. Last one, which is very, very important, is the content creation. Earlier we used to handling generative AI for the basically language processing. Now we could able to generate the videos and the pictures and various what I can say scenarios we could able to generate from generative AI. Lot of content creation is happening. I would say if I take an example of pharmaceutical, various molecules, I mean drug discovery, all these things we will be ahead of 10 years. So to conclude, I mean, whatever we were supposed to innovate in next 10 to 15 years, we are innovating now, and we are going to reap the benefits in next 2 to 3 years.
I think that's interesting, and very clearly as the depth of innovation increases, there is a lot more that we can do from the GCCs, right? I mean, that's what is the optimism for me. And I think, each one of you in your own lens for various dimensions spoke about generative AI. And I belong to a company which always measures everything. It's all about measurement, metrics, KPI. And I see a lot of smiles. It looks like a lot other organizations do the same. So Christopher, a question to you. Do you think the way we look at defining success and measurements Do you think that's going to change with generative AI, or we're going to continue the same traditional way?
So I think the interesting transition that is happening, and especially in an industry like ours, where a lot of what we do is data intensive, right? A large part of the teams here in India are constantly involved in data to the extent where it's either extracted, worked on, or it's enhanced for consumption by others. Today, their KPIs are primarily focused on what they do as individuals. And with whatever technology we're kind of introducing in terms of how they work, that's changing, right? Something that used to typically take them an hour, where they would be eyeballing a contract document just to look for a few data elements, is now being done by a digital assistant that we've built using GenAI or an LLM. So the 100-minute task is now shrunk down to maybe 20 minutes. There's a human in the loop. And that human's KPI is now not a function of just what he does, but a combination of what he is doing, aided by technology. So definitely, I think the KPI aspect is evolving. But along with that, I think there's another flip side to it, right? For all these models to be successful, you require these users to train these models. What we've seen in our experience is a lot of the models that we've tried to use off the shelf are not usable in their native state. We need to train the model specific to our industry, specific to what we do. So the human in the loop is an interesting concept because the KPI is not just about what they are doing, but also how they are training these models to get better. So I may have started a particular process or task which from 180 minutes has come down to 60. But in the next year or so, that 60 minutes may probably shrink down to 30. Eventually, it may even be STP, where I've processed enough volumes to make it a seamless, non-human in the loop kind of process. So KPIs are not just a function of the human performing a task, but also how well is the human training back the model that is helping him do the job he does today. So I think that there's two sides to that KPI now. It's not just about me doing an activity, but also me enabling the tools that help me do the activity. So I think everyone thinks that GenAI is a magic bullet, but the reality is there's a reason we're calling it artificial intelligence. You still need a human to train it. So I think that's going to be an huge contribution that the human operator does, and that's the change in KPIs really.
I think it's a very, very interesting perspective on looking at KPI, not on your performance, but how are you enabling the digital worker who's sitting next door, right? And that's an interesting one. I'm glad, for all you know, this will become a metric in IBM very soon.
Yeah, the interesting part is, right, we embarked on this journey around 6 months, 7 months back. And one of the conversations I constantly have with my business partners is I've implemented the technology, but in its current form, it can only do so much, right? So while you're evaluating the user for his KPIs, I need a metrics that tells me I gave you a model that performed at X accuracy. I need to take that accuracy closer to 99%. And for the team that gets it there faster, you reward them better because they are training the model as they go, right? Yeah. So every exception that comes is being treated as a training moment for the model. Yeah. I think what most people don't understand is that for generative AI to really do its job right, there's a lot of homework that needs to be done, and people just assume, I can take it off the shelf and implement. But the reality is that there's a lot of investment to train that model specific to your, business use case.
Correct. Very, very well said. And when we are talking about generative AI, it's evident, it's implied that the start and end of the journey, it won't end, right? It will continue. The journey is all fueled by technology, directly or indirectly, right? So Amit, and I'm going to call you MUFG Amit and Unilever Amit. So from your perspective, in your organization, have you seen a sea change in the tech stack or the overall technology strategy with the advent of generative AI? Share a little bit of your experience.
Sure. So with generative AI, the use cases that we can use to improve the overall operational excellence of the employees, imbibe the artificial intelligence in the processes that our operators are working on in banking industry, because as far as MUFG is concerned, it's the 7th largest bank in terms of assets in the world, Japan's largest bank. So we can drive a lot of insights from it, as well as we can get a lot of insights in terms of fraud detection. So we need to have data, because data belongs to the customer. We cannot take, as Christopher was mentioning, we cannot take any model which is from any out of the shelf. We have to create those models in-house. And for that, we need to have consent of the customer as well, that we can use your data to train the models. And once we have done that, then we have to regularly monitor that these models are capable enough so that they are not creating any kind of bias, any kind of cases where the response to our regulators is not going to be in a situation where we can explain why a generative AI took the decision which it should not have taken. So human angle to that is all very much required. Now from tech stack perspective, if I talk about, while we have to train this, we definitely need to have and do a lot of investments in cloud computing, because generative AI is too much resource intensive. We definitely need to go ahead and train our own staff so that they understand how to imbibe the AI component in the regular chain as well. Now, generative AI, in my view, cannot sustain on its own without having a lot of data platforms in place, data centricity in place. So data centricity has to be taken care of. We need to have a lot of data governance in place as well, because if the data is not clean, probably the model itself will not get trained properly. So data is something which is important. Then from data, RPA, which is intelligent automation, and from RPA, ML, machine learning, which is also required. And then comes the AI part of it. So it's not just one technology, it's a combination of technology which will work in complete synergy so as to reap the benefit of AI for any organization like ours, while ensuring that we are taking care of regulatory part of it, which is still in the build stage at this point in time. So tech stack is definitely going to change as we move towards more AI, I would say ML, RPA, and towards data.
Yeah, I think, two key takeaways for me is the computing power and obviously changes in the tech stack, right? We may still use the same thing, but in a different way as well. So I think while Amit was talking, I'm referring to Unilever Amit now. So while he was talking, he made a few statements, right? Like the model should not be with bias. I need to answer my regulators. And I can relate. I come from the banking industry, and everyone in banking will fret and fume about regulators before we do anything, right? Now, obviously, for an organization like Unilever, there'll be a lot of changes happening because of generative AI, and we have to keep our eyes and ears open for the legal implications and so on. So how are you tackling with that? Because we are all in a journey where we want to adapt generative AI at scale. So I think your insights will give all of us tremendous value there.
So I think you put it aptly as saying it's evolving still. So let me share with you what we are trying to do in Unilever. If you look at Unilever, we operate in around 190 different countries. There are around 130,000 employees, and every single one of them wants to do something on GenAI. So, it's about how do you really curb, or rather you don't want to stop the enthusiasm, you want to encourage it, but at the same time, you don't want to expose yourself to a lot of risk. So doing it in a responsible and an ethical manner. So the first thing which we've done is we've developed a set of rules which are there for this. So our teams have actually gone into the different tools, GenAI tools which are there. We've said which are actually meeting our standards. When I talk of standards in terms of data privacy, in terms of cyber, and those are what we call the green tools. So these are tools where a Unilever user can go and then actually work on them. So that's the first thing. The second what we've done is a do's and don'ts. And do's and don'ts are more in terms of saying, for example, don't use any confidential information in terms of on any of these platforms. Don't use any data which could be private data. So we use a lot of third-party data again. So there are do's and don'ts. And finally, if you look at this area, like you put it, it's evolving. Even the EU AI draft is still in draft. And then you've got local regulations which are very different for us in different countries. So you've put in a third thing, which is, if in even the slightest bit of doubt, please speak to your legal partner. What we're also asking our employees is, whenever they use it, to record it onto a SharePoint so that somebody can actually go and see it from a time to time to see, are we getting exposed or not, and then take corrective action. Now, it's still an evolving area, like I say. I think sets of rules are still evolving, but what we don't want to do is stop our employees from actually not engaging in it. We want them to do it because that's going to be the new skill for the future. So that's where we are today.
I think that's, you are right. We need to be responsible. We need to be cautiously optimistic and look at it in a careful manner. Now, all of it, legal is one angle, but we kind of wrap around everything with an overall governance at the end of the day, right? Because there are people dealing with it, there are tools dealing with it, there are bots giving us something, and so on. So, Rajesh, in your view, from your experience and organization standpoint, are there extra special things you've done on governance, keeping generative AI in the background?
Oh, well, certainly. I'll definitely walk you through what they have been, but again, let me share an analogy with you because that's what resonates to people, right? Easier to understand, easy to remember. But trust me, 3 hours down the line, 2 weeks from now, if you want to ask, you can only remember a lemon or a story or something. Okay, let me again bring in a story, like what Srinivas told, right? Chatbots are glorified IVRs, so we end up doing that and then realize that we'll have to go back and see what we should or how do we cover our investments by telling, okay, this is what it is. Governance is a big topic, and we have learned through our mistakes, right? We all are aware about the story where there was a king who trusted a monkey and handed over the sword to him to protect him, just to see that a mosquito sit on the king's nose and he slit the king, right? So consider these as metaphors, right? And then for me, AI is like that sword in your hand, and you need to exercise caution to use it where you would want to, right? Like to Srinivas's point, a 8th standard kid can write a program to generate a IVR kind of function, and all of us, including me, we have signed off budgets building platforms like Dialogflow or Core, or invested in so many stories. We're all good storytellers, we're all good salesmen, we're all good consultants, but then hands-on, after we have implemented these bots, we realized, okay, this is something that a script could have done, and we have wasted a lot of money. So today, with GenAI, there is a lot of optimism, no doubt about it, but the role of the governance team or the TGRC team, that's technology, risk, governance, and compliance, we put in a checklist and say, your job is to say no. You don't have to justify, you don't have to go back and tell them what they need and kind. So today a business case is put in front of you. Yesterday my friend Samir was working on a business case. He was on a call before he joined this session as well, busy working on a business case and kind. He's going to go and present it, he's going to give all the knowledge, and all that the governance team from my organization is going to say, okay, I heard this, but it's a no. And he's not going to go and tell him to correct the business case or correct. All that his job as a lawyer, right? The lawyer's job or a legal team or a compliance team for us, they come and say no. So we need to empower our teams, whoever is the person in the governance department, bring a senior person or bring somebody and empower him or her, and the only job for him or her is to say no unless it is convinced. So that's the first golden rule or rule of thumb. Secondly, when it comes to governance, governance is not about technology alone. And AI, unfortunately, should not be correlated as technology. It is one of the means that enables your technology. But Python is a tool. Okay, now that can be considered as a technical tool. Or you're using any other platform, which is technology. AI is a broader concept. It's a philosophy. It is a concept. It is a means. It is a way forward for us to work, how we are going to imbibe in our organization, imbibe in the way of working is something which becomes an eminent role for a governance organization. It is evangelizing. So the governance organization, while the entire technology players or the L&D is evangelizing AI, the governance organization's role is to evangelize common sense. Right, the next kind of era is going to be now like Gen common sense kind of. Okay, now we're all AI, we're all technology now. We want to do lot into AI, but we're not using our common sense to decide when to use the sword which is in our hand. So the role of using the role of the governance team is going to bring in that common sense. And if they have to ask question after they say no, before they say yes, they have to challenge you and say, is there something you can do beyond the business case you brought to me? I want to use GenAI and build a prompt library with 100 prompts. Then what will you do with that? So these are the questions that they should ask. The second role for a governance organization is to ask questions and challenge them and say, you know what, you have brought in a concept, you brought in a business case, or just like what you see in Shark Tanks. This is my money which I'm investing. Can you prove, or do you have an outside-in point of view? Most of us, unfortunately, are in a rat race, telling, I want to have a first-mover advantage. But then we have seen stories, like Paytm is a common example, right? It almost overtook the market at one point in time, and then today, where we see it's GPay everywhere. So it's okay to step back, wait for somebody who is in deep pockets, who can go ahead and deliver an outcome, and it is okay to be a follower unless you have a buy-in in your business case, or unless your motto is to be a leader in that space and drive kind of. So there are multiple things that a governance organization should look at. While there are a lot, I would pause here, given the interest of time, and say, one, from a governance standpoint, create a checklist and empower a person to stand up and say no. If it is an approval from the CEO as well, please be humble, polite, and say, ask question as to why is it that you're approving such a business case, test it, and challenge the status quo. Don't go with the flow is what a primary role of a governance organization in today's day would be. That's my submission.
I think and anything which is new in an industry and evolving, governance is very, very crucial, right? And the point that you put, AI being all pervasive, it's important to have that 360-degree governance. It doesn't start and stop with technology. It's kind of impacting everywhere. And I love the point you said. You're giving them the authority to say no, which is a big deal, even if it comes from the CEO. I think that's an important thing, because that's what tests how effective and resilient a governance organization is. I guess legal and governance are important elements beyond the aha moments that generative AI gives us. Now, talking about changes, we spoke about governance, we spoke about legal. So Sreejith, do you see changes in sourcing strategy happen? And I'm just going across different topics, so it may not sound very, very sequential and only technology. So do you see changes in sourcing strategy happening with the advent of generative AI?
The talent sourcing, I would assume.
Yeah.
It should, hopefully. All right, okay, now let's see.
It shouldn't make all of us redundant.
Yeah,
okay?
well, I mean, I guess. Okay, look, I mean, today we have a bunch of problem, right? I mean, if you look into talent, I mean, people spoke about it. I mean, we want talent, I mean, you know. So one of the problems which we have is, I mean, the amount of time it takes, I mean, to find the right talent, you know, whether it is sourcing, you know, a profile, we look into 10 and we get 1. You know, the time it is spent to interview people, I mean, before you find, you know, the right candidate. Why not a technology which will source the profile, you know, without me spending time to screen, because it makes no sense. Because what the guy, at least in the Indian context, put in the profile, when you talk to them is very different, you know, you suddenly realize, oh, it doesn't make sense. So why not we give to a GenAI which will at least, I mean, source the profile. why not even the GenAI interact with the candidate and to tell me, whether the guy will suit me? Why do I spend time? Perhaps, that's one thing which we could look into. And then, of course, finally, we would talk to them, but at least we reduce the time it takes, to find the right talent. Now, once we find the talent, I would assume the next problem, which we often see, is, the interaction between, talking to the talent once we rolled out an offer and before he joins. Often we lose candidates in the process, either because, there is no engagement, which we have, or, they find another offer. But what we have seen is, if you engage with these candidates in the duration of their notice period and so on, we tend to, have higher success, for the person to join us. So why not we have some kind of systems which interact with this person often enough, at least give them the confidence, okay, look, we care about you. While, okay, it's a robot which is doing that, but still, perhaps, that would help. So I believe, there is opportunity for sure to use GenAI, in sourcing talent. And I hope, somebody is working towards it.
I think this is interesting because just to share with all of you, we had the head of IBM Consulting here 3 weeks back or 2 weeks back, and one of the questions he was asking me is, why are you not looking at generative AI for sourcing? And I was looking around saying, where am I going to use? But you've given me a lot of ideas. Okay. Now, sourcing is one dimension, and clearly you've given us a lot of ideas on how do we, leverage the right fit for, my organization. Next is obviously you source the talent. You have the whole talent management to be happening within an organization. And Raghu, any thoughts from you on, what could we do differently? How could we leverage generative AI from a talent management standpoint?
Coming on to the overall landscape of strategy, talent strategy, looking at this so you attract the talent, you source the right talent, you develop the talent. That's where learning and development will come into picture. And then you have to retain the talent. GenAI has its influence on all the areas. Looking at the skill landscape, the demand for the skills going forward, I think GenAI, I would say it has democratized English language. So why I'm telling this is lots and lots of going forward, if you have to develop a systems, control system coming on to embedded side of it. We were heavily dependent on coding knowledge and your basically design elements into it. Coming on to GenAI with LLM coming into picture and foundation models coming into picture, there are a lot of prompt writers. Already many of the GCCs already have good prompt writers. There the biggest advantage what we get from a prompt writer is not the English. It's the domain knowledge the prompt writer carries. So the significance for the industry specific or enterprise specific domain knowledge will play a pivotal role going forward with GenAI. And how do we develop it? Earlier, the students or graduates who come from college, join the companies, they develop the domain knowledge over a period of time. I think here, collaboration with respect to the universities, how do we develop that domain knowledge in the universities plays a bigger role going forward, because looking at the shifts happening, it's a paradigm shifts happening in many industries. One is coming on to the data analytics and training these models, whether it is foundational models. The triangular relationship of logic, domain, and AI will come into place. So that's where the entire talent landscape will evolve, and India has a bigger advantage here compared to other regions, because we are already ahead of AI. And I think we have to nurture it to the next level, right in the universities and also in the organizations, and take them to next level so that India has an advantage. As we were discussing, it's a time for shifting from volume to value.
Value. Very, very well said. And obviously, you know, lots of things to be done around talent sourcing, as well as the way we look at evaluating them. Christopher gave us examples of metrics. So Amit, I'm coming to you on, you know, I keep thinking of bank, risk management. So what are the guardrails your organization is putting around generative AI? We did have Rajesh as well as Amit touch upon it. Are there any other dimensions of guardrails that you're putting in your organization?
So I would say the biggest guardrails usually for banking industry come from regulators. So regulations are getting formed because generative AI only started sometime in the last quarter of 2022. So this is coming up. Follow the regulation is one of the biggest one. Second is ethical use of AI. Why we are using AI, I think we should be very careful about, so that it is used for the productive purpose and for customer centricity only. Third one, I would say the most important one is looking at the models itself, whether the model is giving the right kind of output that is expected, so that, as I mentioned earlier, if we have to explain it to the regulator why the output and the decision making was this, had human done this, is the output going to be the same as AI has done it? So that is something which is very, very critical for us, ensuring that the continuous evaluation of the output is also taken care of. So these are some of the guardrails which I think are very important for the banking industry while we adopt AI.
Thank you, Amit. And Christopher, I'm going to ask you a very different question. One word you want the audience to remember about generative AI?
Well, I think the one word I'd like to leave everyone is be cautious.
Be cautious. Okay. We end this, you know, panel, the interesting discussion that we had with that, on that note, right? Be cautious, responsible, cautiously optimistic. I heard a lot of caution, but I'm sure all of us shared, and I think we learned a lot from each other's experience, and that's how our journeys are going to evolve. Thank you.